Hi, this is Sally's Book Club. Tune in daily for the best books from around the globe. Today we're introducing Biographies of Great Men, a classic of Western biographical literature by Nobel Prize laureate Rolland, a representative of 20th century European realist literature, gained fame through his novel Jean Christophe. The Biographies trilogy predates his global recognition. The three subjects are German musician Beethoven, Italian sculptor Michelangelo, and Russian writer Tolstoy. Rolland enshrined these artists as heroes, hence the trilogy's nickname, The Three Heroes.
Rolland believed they transcended extraordinary suffering to artistic creation rather than succumbing to despair.
Thus they achieved greatness through spiritual fortitude. His impassioned prose inspired generations, redefining societal conceptions of heroism. Why did Rolland choose biographies to establish these artists as new archetypal heroes? This stems from late 19th century historical context and Rolland's personal circumstances. To fully understand the trilogy, we must examine both the subjects' lives and the literary movements influencing Rolland, essentially answering four key questions. Why did Rolland write these biographies? What's his methodology, content, focus, and ultimate impact? The three volumes differ in chronology and stylistic approach. We'll analyze them seasonally by publication date. First, examining the 1903 Beethoven biography.
Two crucial contextual factors. Rolland's midlife crisis at approaching 40 with unmet ambitions, and Europe's intellectual malaise under fin de siècle decadence.
These dual pressures catalyzed Rolland's writing initiative. First, Rolland's personal crisis. In 1903, while teaching at Sorbonne University with student acclaim, Rolland felt unfulfilled in his literary ambitions. On the surface, his life seemed decent. But Romain Rolland was no ordinary man.
He harbored grand ambitions, trapped in academic life with unfulfilled passion.
For him, this existence felt equivalent to self-imposed seclusion. Why did he descend into this reclusive state?
Two devastating failures had crushed him. The first blow was his divorce from first wife Clotilde.
Clotilde was a cultured heiress, while Rolland was a poor provincial when they met. In 19th century France, the Paris provincial divide was stark, especially in cultural circles. Flaubert's Sentimental Education depicted provincials' struggles in Paris harder than modern Beijing drifters. Clotilde overlooked Rolland's poverty, drawn by his talent like the legendary Chinese lovers Sima, Xingru, and Suo Wenjin.
Ironically, Rolland's early works gained recognition only through his wife's connections, not merit. This bred resentment. He felt misunderstood. She deemed his work self-indulgent. Their mutual dissatisfaction spiraled until divorce after 8 years. Simultaneously, his career stagnated completely. The second failure came from theatrical endeavors.
Since childhood, he'd adored Shakespeare, yearning to create grand dramas. Arriving in Paris, he found theaters dominated by vulgar commercial productions. His manifesto, The People's Theatre, criticized profit-driven drama, alienating Parisian theater circles. Disgusted by shallow plays, He resolved to create his own. He maintained rigorous standards and clear creative vision for his dramas.
He initially tried emulating Shakespeare, but in France at that time, few understood Shakespearean drama, rejecting its profound tragedy. Moreover, Rolland himself hadn't mastered the craft, leading to swift failure. Subsequent attempts at faith tragedies and revolutionary dramas similarly failed, leaving only unperformed drafts.
French audiences rejected these intense, chaste tragedies lacking erotic elements.
Thus, his dozen plays sank like stones, creating barely a ripple.
Only decades later, when vulgar dramas lost appeal, did people recognize Rolland's early reform advocacy and experiments.
Though an academic star, Rolland's first passionate career venture into drama met deafening silence. Approaching 40 without recognition, his failure seemed absolute. Battered by professional and personal failures, Rolland retreated into voracious reading.
Through this immersion, he realized all great creators endure extraordinary trials. True greatness emerges from suffering. Empowered by these lives, he resolved to share this strength through biographical works. Beethoven. Rolland's lifelong idol naturally became his first biographical subject. Rolland's Beethoven worship began at age 4 or 5. His music-loving mother nurtured his talents from childhood. Among Mozart, Haydn, and others, Beethoven's powerful music and pure character profoundly inspired Rolland's development. In 1901, visiting Beethoven's Bonn birthplace for a festival deeply moved Rolland. This experience inspired his essay, Beethoven's Destiny, laying groundwork for his 1903 biography. Years later, he wrote another work, titled Beethoven's Great Creative Period, analyzing Beethoven's musical achievements from a musicological perspective. Thus, Beethoven was Rolland's ideal biographical subject in terms of material preparation, familiarity, and spiritual resonance. One might say Beethoven was both the inspiration and primary driving force behind biographies of great men. Understanding Beethoven means understanding 80% of the biography. Now, let's examine the second contextual factor, the historical backdrop of Rolland's biographical writing. The classic preface to Beethoven biography begins with describing Europe's zeitgeist.
How stifling our atmosphere! Old Europe lies comatose in putrid decadence.
Vulgar materialism suppresses thought, paralyzes governance and individual action. Society suffocates in cunning self-interest.
This vivid depiction captures fin de siècle Europe, numb materialism, moral decay, and spiritual paralysis. The era saw rising youth, suicides prompting early sociological studies, individual fragility mirroring national corruption. The 1895 Dreyfus Affair. Officer Alfred Dreyfus was falsely accused of espionage, with evidence later proving another's guilt.
Yet military courts upheld the verdict, even imprisoning defender Émile Zola, devastating intellectuals like Rolland.
This became emblematic of French societal decay, profoundly shaking Rolland's faith in institutions.
Rolland blamed unhealthy literary trends for this century's sickness, vowing literary reformation.
When Rolland emerged, France's literary giants, Hugo, Flaubert, Renan, had died, leaving superficial prosperity masking decadence.
Only Zola and Maupassant remained, but their fragmented realism lacked kid power. Meanwhile, aestheticism and symbolism centered in France pursued art for art's sake, abandoning social utility and severing beauty from morality. Writers like Wilde and Mallarmé emphasized form over substance, treating literature as delicate artifacts devoid of intellectual depth.
Though contributing to artistic form, these movements spread decadence across Europe.
European capitalism was evolving into imperialism through rapid expansion and accumulation.
Pre-BWI surface. Prosperity couldn't mask spiritual emptiness beneath. Intellectuals and youth lacking direction drowned in hedonism or self-indulgent sentimentalism through hollow literary forms.
They oscillated between frivolous decadence and forced melancholy, embracing cowardly escapism.
Facing social darkness, they chose willful blindness or impotent complaints over courageous resistance.
As Peking University's Qian LeCun noted, these were the earliest refined egoists. Rolland, influenced by Tolstoy's critical realism, believed literature should confront reality and address social ills. Through Biographies, Rolland launched his counterattack against decadent literature as 20th century realism's standard-bearer. This was not merely literary competition, but a clash of life philosophies. Decadent literature numbed suffering Europe like anesthesia, while Rolland used Beethoven's struggles as awakening needles, proving Kunen's stretching power. Understanding this context reveals why Rolland structured Beethoven's biography around suffering.
Beethoven's earliest Kunen stemmed from family circumstances predating his birth.
As fellow representatives of 18th century classical music's peak, child prodigy, Mozart's 14-year seniority burdened Beethoven with anxiety of influence.
He had to emulate yet surpass. Worse still, his Mozart imitation began under paternal coercion. His father possessed basic musical knowledge but mediocre talent, violent temper, and alcoholism.
Attempting to market Beethoven as another Mozart-like prodigy, yet failing to provide proper nurturing, only abuse masked as education. Beethoven, composed at 4, performed publicly at 8, published first work at 13.
But musical success couldn't heal childhood trauma. He became withdrawn, stubborn with few friends and cold family relations. These flaws stemmed from paternal abuse during formative years.
Channeling energy into music made him socially inarticulate in reality.
At 17, his mother's death severed his last human connection.
At 31, Beethoven fell for a captivating lady, composing Moonlight Sonata for her.
But this coquettish woman proved selfish.
After marrying another, she even requested Beethoven assist her lover.
This betrayal drove Beethoven to suicidal despair, especially self-loathing for loving someone unworthy.
Later engagement to Thérèse Malfatti seemed promising. He interrupted Fifth Symphony to create tender Fourth Symphony.
He composed Appassionata Sonata for Thérèse. Yet ultimately they separated. Beethoven's volatile temperament overcame Thérèse's affection. Reality tore them apart. The engagement dissolved. Domestic bliss remained elusive. His will bore 3 words: solitude, solitude, solitude. Thus he remained solitary throughout life. He pinned hopes on adopted nephew Karl for comfort, pouring all affection into him. But Karl proved a dissolute wastrel indifferent to Beethoven.
Karl even declared, "My uncle's demands for improvement made me more depraved." Not only absent at Beethoven's deathbed, Karl's gambling debts caused lifelong anguish. Beethoven's arrogant temperament, strained relationships with family and contemporaries alike. Goethe reportedly snubbed Beethoven when encountering nobility, bowing obsequiously while Beethoven strode past. Beethoven later rebuked Goethe, ending their potential friendship. Rolland's essay, Goethe and Beethoven, explores their discord.
Childhood forged arrogance, hindered social acceptance, yet greater tragedy awaited. Deafness became the apex of Beethoven's suffering. Translator Foulet noted, "Deafness means partial death for ordinary people, but total destruction for musicians." When deafness struck post-Second Symphony, he masked disability while desperately maintaining creativity. From 1815, communication required conversation, notebooks, written dialogues. The full extent of his anguish remains unimaginable. Deafness deepened his isolation from society. Financial struggles compounded by unsold works and debts.
Neither livelihood nor artistic ideals permitted retreat. Music continued in silence.
Early deafness caused conducting mishaps during rehearsals, undisclosed by embarrassed musicians. A friend finally intervened to prevent further embarrassment, prompting Beethoven's abrupt departure.
Yet 2 years later, Beethoven returned to the conductor's podium amidst thunderous applause. Deafness made him unaware until, seeing waving hats, his emotional realization of success moved audiences deeply. This moment profoundly moved philosopher Bertrand Russell, who called it soul-shaking emotional eruption from silence. Adversity ignited Beethoven's creative explosion, producing his most sublime works. At classical music's zenith, he shattered traditions, expanding orchestral scale and unleashing Romanticism's precursor. The monumental Ninth Symphony, triumphant ode to joy, became Western music's unconquered peak. The iconic Ode to Joy forms the choral climax of this symphony's fourth movement.
Composed in complete deafness, Beethoven never physically heard his own masterpiece.
Rolland concluded Beethoven's Kunan narrative with joy, highlighting his transcendent greatness. Denied joy by life, he created joy to give the world. Echoing Guy Cheng's verse. Darkness gave me dark eyes, yet I seek light. Same spiritual resonance. Through suffering, Beethoven purified his soul, transforming pain into joyous creation. To Rolland, Beethoven embodied elemental force. His controversial remark about women playing Beethoven emphasized the music's raw masculine power. This primal energy infused Rolland's biography, making it electrically compelling. The 1903 publication's immediate success marked Rolland's literary breakthrough, gaining devoted readership. With this confidence, Romain Rolland embarked on writing his magnum opus, Jean Christophe. This decadent novel was hailed as an epic poem, later recognized as the progenitor of Roman fleuve, earning him the 1915 Nobel Prize in Literature. The protagonist prototype was Beethoven himself. Why did Beethoven's biography achieve such profound influence? Rolland accurately analyzed Europe's social climate, literate leisure readers being petty bourgeoisie, intellectuals, and youth. By modern standards, these were privileged, second-generation rich, without material worries.
Yet their lives brimmed with restless energy amidst spiritual emptiness.
They desperately needed guidance, a beacon in the darkness. They yearned for inspiration, awakening, and heroic transformation. Beethoven biography emerged as the perfect answer to their aspirations. Like pilgrims, readers worshipped Beethoven's spirit, treating the biography as moral scripture for courage. Literarily, the biography wasn't polished, historically accurate, but structurally loose with unrestrained lyricism.
Mainstream critics largely ignored it, denying Rolland literary recognition.
Paradoxically, such rawness enhanced its emotional power. Like Liang Qichao's Young China and Zhao Rong's Revolutionary Army in late Yizan, China. Passionate text that inspired generations. Rolland himself was pleasantly surprised by the biography's unexpected success.
He recognized awakened enthusiasm couldn't mask society's shallow understanding of suffering.
He planned sculpting heroic archetypes, pelling diverse Kunin and greatness to catalyze social change. Thus he pressed his advantage, completing his second heroic biography in 1906. The Michelangelo biography will be detailed in our next episode. We'll explore the trilogy's characteristics and impact through the Michelangelo biography and the Tolstoy biography, including why Rolland stopped after Tolstoy. This concludes the first half of Biographies of Great Men. Study notes are below the audio. See you next time.